It's fair to say that the primary function of art is to entertain and basically give audiences what they want. But let's be honest, a satisfying payoff hits that much harder if the journey there is coloured by frustration and turmoil. To be clear, this list doesn't include moments that inadvertently aggravated the audience, but rather willfully enraging moments that were entirely by design. So with that in mind then, I'm Ellie with What Culture here with 10 TV episodes that wanted to piss you off. Number 10. Made in America, The Sopranos. The Sopranos series finale Made in America is one of the most talked about closes in TV history and caused the show's fanbase to have a collective meltdown upon its original 2007 airing. The episode and the series ends with Tony Soprano gathering with his family in a diner while the threat of an impending indictment hangs over his head. Throughout the scene, as Journey's Don't Stop Believin' plays, we get the vibe that maybe, just maybe, we're building to something here. Especially with David Chase constantly cross-cutting to Tony's daughter Meadow struggling to park her car nearby. Eventually, the diner door opens and Tony looks up, only for the scene to cut sharply to black with the music abruptly cutting off. After a brief pause, the end credits roll, and that's all she wrote. The ending was so sudden that many initially believed their cable signal had dropped out, but this was indeed Chase's complete vision for the show's ending. Chase said, "There was so much more to say than could have been conveyed by an image of Tony face down in a bowl of onion rings with a bullet in his head. The way I see it is that Tony Soprano had been people's alter ego. They had gleefully watched him rob, kill, pillage, lie and cheat. They had cheered him on, and then all of a sudden they wanted to see him punished for all that. They wanted to see his brains splattered on the wall. I thought that was disgusting, frankly." Number 9. The Big Payback, Atlanta. The recent third season of Atlanta was nothing short of a masterpiece. The season's biggest swing comes in the fantastic episode The Big Payback, which depicts an alternate reality where a landmark court case rules that the descendants of black slaves can sue the descendants of slave owners for reparations. With that, America begins changing drastically overnight. White people have their wages garnished on a monthly basis to benefit black descendants of slaves, and Marshall is sued by a black woman whose ancestors were owned by his. The episode ends with a scene in a restaurant where most of the wait staff, including Marshall, are white, while the diners are largely black and non-white, confirming that a major paradigm shift has taken place. The episode sets social media on fire almost immediately, with many praising its provocative and thoughtful examination of a challenging subject. Predictably, many white viewers expressed their outrage at such a hypothetical scenario, feeling that they shouldn't suffer for the sins of their ancestors no matter how much they might have directly or indirectly benefited from white supremacy. Number 8. Life of Brian, Family Guy. Almost a decade after it aired, Family Guy's Life of Brian remains one of the most controversial episodes of any animated TV show ever. The episode features the death of the Griffin's beloved dog Brian, who passes away after being hit by a car. Fans weren't only outraged at one of the show's most beloved characters being killed off, in such a brutal way no less, but that he was replaced in the very same episode. The Griffins speedily acquire a new dog, the smooth-talking Vinny, who quickly ingratiates himself into the family, all while fans categorically flipped over Brian dying and getting replaced so abruptly. A petition was even launched insisting that Brian's demise be reversed, but this just played perfectly into Seth MacFarlane's well-laid plan. The Family Guy creator ultimately resurrected Brian just 2 episodes later via time travel shenanigans, with the intent all along being to briefly shake up the established formula. MacFarlane even said he'd have to be effing high to kill Brian permanently. Number 7. Shut Up and Dance, Black Mirror. Black Mirror has prided itself on pushing the audience's buttons over the years, but the satirical sci-fi series has never delivered a more violently bewildering twist ending than in the Season 3 episode Shut Up and Dance. The episode follows teenager Kenny, who is blackmailed into committing a series of actions by a hacker who has captured video of him masturbating through his laptop. Teamed with another blackmailed man, Hector, Kenny carries out a bank robbery, at which point audiences might begin to consider whether robbing a bank is really worth preventing the spread of such a video. It's revealed at the end of the episode that Kenny was actually pleasuring himself to child pornography, and though Kenny ultimately does everything the hacker asks, the video is released anyway and the episode ends with the police approaching him. Though some praise the episode's boldness in tearing down the stereotype that all paedophiles are gross old men, others expressed volcanic rage at the plot twist, feeling that it was deployed for mere shock value and undermined undermined the episode's focus on the dangers of technology. Simply, this was a bold swing of a twist, and writer-creator Charlie Brooker acutely knew it would piss a large portion of the audience off. Number 6. Scott's TOTS, The Office. Scott's TOTS is a legendary episode of the US version of The Office, at once held up as one of the show's best episodes and also its most painful to watch. Here's the rub. It's revealed that Michael Scott made a promise to a class of underprivileged kids 10 years earlier that he'd pay for all their college tuition, believing that he'd be in a financial position to do so a decade later. However, in the present day, Michael, of course, hasn't become an ultra-successful entrepreneur, and so he's forced to visit the kids and explain that he won't be funding their tuition. What follows is an excruciating masterpiece of cringe comedy as Michael procrastinates breaking the news. They show Michael the reading room named after him, tell him about their dreams for the future, and even perform a song to commemorate him. Michael and we the audience are desperate to disappear into a hole and never emerge, but it somehow gets worse when Michael finally comes clean. After telling the students the truth, he tries to assuage his guilt by offering each of them laptop batteries, which unsurprisingly goes down like a lead balloon. Scott's TOTS is such a viscerally uncomfortable episode of TV that there's even a subreddit devoted to it, and fans often report skipping it on repeat viewings because the psychic pain from watching is just too damn much. Number 5. Clarifications, The Wire. While it wasn't exactly a surprise that Omar Little didn't make it to the end of The Wire's 5-season run in one piece, it sure did piss off fans seeing how he got taken off the chessboard. Given Omar's stature as a Robin Hood-like stick-up man who impressively avoided death time and time again, he seemed destined to go down swinging, perishing in an epic gunfire with fellow criminals or the police perhaps. But just 3 episodes from the end of the series, Omar is shot dead while buying cigarettes at a corner store by a most unsuspecting of assailants, a young drug dealer named Kennard. It was about as shocking as The Wire ever got, and though it left the fanbase practically apoplectic, giving Omar such a mundane, even humiliating death was precisely the point. To hammer the point home, Omar's death is mythologized by other criminals, who gossip about him dying in a huge shootout, all while the world at large pays his demise little mind. Omar may not have gotten the exhilarating, heroic ending that so many wanted to see, but that's not real life. Number 4. Postpartum, The Shield. The Shield's phenomenal 5th season saw the strike team's chickens come home to roost when their myriad corrupt actions were investigated by doggedly determined Internal Affairs Officer John Kavanagh. Kavanagh manages to make charges stick on one member of the team, Lem, who he attempts to flip and make rat out the rest of the strike team. Ultimately, team leader Vic Mackey arranges for Lem to instead flee to Mexico, but fellow member Shane Vendrell is tricked into believing that Lem will turn on the team, and so takes drastic steps to prevent it. In a devastating, infuriating scene as Lem sits in his car and prepares to run to Mexico, Shane suddenly drops a live grenade in Lem's lap, the resulting explosion mortally wounding him. Seeing Lem, the moral compass of the strike team, suffer such a brutal death, from someone he loved like a brother even, was absolutely infuriating, especially as it was completely avoidable. But this was also a necessary narrative energizing event that set in motion the show's incredible final 2 seasons. Number 3. That's My Dog, 6 Feet Under. 6 Feet Under is one of the most acclaimed TV dramas in history. By far its most divisive episode, however, is Season 4's That's My Dog. The episode largely revolves around David picking up a handsome hitchhiker, Jake, who turns out to be a drug-addled maniac. Throughout the ordeal, David is beaten, tied up, and forced to smoke crack, and then in the episode's final moments has a gun put to his head before Jake escapes into the night. Given the show's focal theme of death, there's a very real tension cutting through this episode that David might not survive the night. If it made you angry, as it did many, that's clearly exactly what director Alan Pohl and writer Scott Buck intended. This was a violent break from the norm. But rather than being a mere disposable one-off, David's PTSD following the incident became his defining character arc for the show's remainder. Number 2. The Mountain and the Viper, Game of Thrones. Game of Thrones' Season 4 episode The Mountain and the Viper left literally millions of people screaming at their TVs in a blind rage. The episode centered around Tyrion Lannister's trial by combat after being accused of Joffrey's murder. The dashing badass Oberyn Martell agreed to fight in Tyrion's place and take on Gregor the Mountain Clegane. At first, the battle appears to go well for Oberyn, who manages to stab Clegane with a poison-tipped spear, which eventually kills him, but not yet. Rather than finish the job, Oberyn first wants Clegane to confess to killing his sister Elia, and Oberyn ultimately wastes enough time parading around that Clegane's able to trip him and get the upper hand. He then mockingly confesses to Elia's murder before gouging Oberyn's eyes out and nauseatingly crushing his skull, killing him. It was a deeply maddening outcome for two reasons. Oberyn had a wide open window to confirm the kill but had to make a spectacle out of it first, and Oberyn's defeat of course meant that Tyrion was sentenced to death. In just about any other show, it'd be tough to believe that Tyrion would indeed be executed, but given Thrones' anything-goes approach to its entire cast, it was easy for non-readers to believe that Tyrion's days were indeed numbered. Now, before we get to number 1, there are major spoilers to follow if you haven't yet seen Stranger Things Season 4 in its entirety, so you have been warned. Number 1, the piggyback Stranger Things. Look, Stranger Things fans really only have themselves to blame at this point if they get hopelessly attached to the cool new character who, shocker, ends up dying a deeply tragic death. And so when D&D loving metalhead Eddie Munson was introduced at the start of Season 4, it was a fair guess that his days were already numbered. And in the 4th season's epic final episode, The Piggyback, the expected happens. After belting out a riveting rendition of Metallica's Master of Puppets to lure the Demobats away from his friends, Eddie realizes they need more time to attack Vecna, and so continues to draw the creature's attention away. However, he ends up swarmed by Demobats and mortally wounded. In a gut-wrenching scene, Eddie dies in his pal Dustin's arms, and to make matters worse, Vecna survives, the Upside Down has begun to bleed into Hawkins, and the world at large still considers Eddie a murder suspect. Needless to say, when the Hawkins gang finally defeats Vecna in Season 5, it's going to feel all the more gratifying as revenge for Eddie's death. And that concludes our list. If you think we missed any, then do let us know in the comments below, and while you're there, don't forget to like and subscribe and tap that notification bell. Also, head over to Twitter and follow us there, and I can be found across various social medias just by searching Ellie Littlechild. I've been Ellie with What Culture. I hope you have a magical day, and I'll see you real soon.